Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hump Day here at the Gorilla Sports Studios. Whoop, whoop. Hump Day, if you get that reference. I'm Jesse Montano. We're joined by Meghan Angley in just a moment. We got a great show for you guys. We're going to address some of the rumors that are floating around out there surrounding the Colorado Avalanche and what the trade bait board might look like out of Denver. But I do want to remind you guys about our great friends over at Trusted American Mortgage. Go to trustedamerican.com right now. They want to help you lower your interest rate and get a better monthly payment now here in the summer months when you're wanting to enjoy yourself a little bit. So head on over trustedamerican.com right now. See how much money they can help you start saving today. Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in. I'm Jesse Montano. She's Meghan Angley. This is Gorilla Sports Off Ice. We've got a good show for you guys today. Meghan, we're going to be discussing the rumors that are out, and I'm going to use the word rumor pretty lightly, and that's part of what we're going to address around Marty Necas and the conversation that's out there surrounding him potentially being on the move. We're going to take a look at maybe some other players that we think, maybe more prominent players. We've talked a lot about Miles Wood, things like that. Some more prominent players that could potentially also be on the move. We're going to get into previewing the game tonight. But we're going to start somewhere else. And before we get there with the news of the day, as always, how you doing?
I'm hanging in there.
Yeah.
It's just been a bumpy ride for like the personal life of Meghan Angley this summer, but the hockey part is always good and I love drama. So I'm so excited to talk about rumors today.
Yes. Yeah. This is a drama pod. Were you in the Springs today?
No.
Okay. All right. I was going to say
I'll be
long
going
drive
in a couple tomorrow night.
Okay. Not to be fully doxing you out here and putting your location out, but
it's okay.
I knew
vague enough.
I know that you and I had talked, and I know you were heading back here in the last couple of days, so I didn't know if maybe you were scrambling to get up here from Colorado Springs. But Meghan, we did get breaking news this morning. And I'm going to ask you a follow-up question in a minute because it was breaking. We didn't know when it was coming. Cale Makar has been named the NHL's Norris Trophy winner for the league's top defenseman. It's his second time winning this honor. And Meghan, when you look at the voting, it was a runaway. Wasn't even close. 163 more first-place votes than the guy who came in second, which was Zach Werenski. My first question for you before we start talking about Cale, are you enjoying the way that the NHL is doing the awards this year?
I'm going to be honest. I can appreciate it for what it is, but I felt more connected to it when I could tune in as a live viewer for the award. And it might mean more to the players from a sentimental perspective for it to be done up in this way with really close families and friends as part of the storyline. Obviously, some of Cale's teammates there for the presentation of this award. I thought that Meredith Gaudreau to present Sean Monahan with the Masterton was a really nice touch, but it's kind of getting lost in my news feed. And so like I saw that video hours later, and I think people maybe aren't as aware of it happening and reacting to it in real time because of this format. And I don't know how to measure it then in that case. Like the presentation of it is still cool and I can appreciate it, but it's getting lost in the shuffle, I think, a little bit more.
Well, and it's just like, didn't know that they were announcing the Norris today.
We had an idea about Masterton, for example.
Yeah.
Had no idea about Norris today.
Right. And I'm with you. I love conceptually, I think it's great. Surprise the players, people that mean a lot to them, friends, family. I totally get it. But in addition to what you were saying about it getting lost like in your feeds, I also feel like, oh, wow, another surprise presentation video. It's like the 8th one in the last 2 weeks. It just like the shine kind of wore off of it quickly. And again, to your point, I'm sure it's better for the players. And Cale Makar hasn't had multiple experience. You know, he didn't get multiple trophies dropped off to him. So like, I'm sure it's great for him. But yeah, I'm with you. I definitely feel I don't know what the right way is to do it, because like back when they had like the 3-hour award show, that was not good.
There's so many things wrong with that format too, to include hosts who insult the players. So that is not necessarily me advocating to go back to the old format. That still didn't work in a lot of ways. But I think from an attention perspective, I was seated and sat for the award show. And I just felt my interest was more fully captured versus splitting it out like this and having it show up online.
I felt like last year they got close because they shortened that award show down to like an hour. And they announced some of the smaller ones ahead of time. Yes. But to your point, like they've definitely tried the ESPYs thing with the host, the comedian who, you know, takes jabs at and like they do it for other big award shows. But I remember just us all being in Vegas last year listening to it, and it's like, someone did not prep this guy enough for what type of room he was going to be speaking to. Because like 20% of his jokes landed.
Even someone like Biz, who has that kind of rapport with players, but it doesn't always land. Like the Nathan McKinnon interview, where he was asked about the Jared Bednar lookalike, and he said, "I didn't think it was very funny." Anyways, I could see someone like Biz being a better host because he's connected to the hockey community, has a better pulse for it. But even then, there's not 100% success rate. Maybe comedy just isn't the way to go with the host at all.
Well, and to your point, like give Biz credit. Like when one of those doesn't land, like, he knows how to like play off of it with the player. Like, okay, Nate didn't find that funny. The dog is dialed in. Like
they made him run around the studio, I'm pretty sure, as punishment.
Right. As we're like and I'm not trying to, you know, dunk specifically on any of the hosts in the past ones, but it's just been like, that was not like that probably wasn't the right joke for this moment. And because they're just up there trying to give their monologue, they just kind of move on to the next thing. And so I'm with you. There's a lot of flaws in the way they were doing it. I like parts of what they're doing here. I still think that they should be at the drawing board figuring out the right way to do this.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about Cale Makar himself.
Cale Makar.
30 goals, 92 points, Megan, career highs for him in both. And when you go through the numbers analytically, I mean, in the upper half, more so in the upper half, more than in the upper half, rock solid in his own end, away from the puck. It's hard to find a lot of things that Cale Makar doesn't excel at. Not only do I think he was one of the most effective defensemen in the league this year, when you're putting up 30 goals, that close to 100 points, to me, this felt like a pretty easy decision for voters.
Absolutely. It was hard not to give Zach Werenski credit for the year that he had, because from one year to the next, the huge step forward that Werenski took and the impact he had on a Columbus Blue Jackets team that was expected to have a very different year from the year that Colorado was expected to have. And so there are lots of aspects of Werenski's year that I want to give credit to, but even still, the analytics favor Cale Makar in a lot of ways. And it goes both ends. He's obviously such a talented player in the O-zone, came away with the most power play goals of any defenseman. But in his own end, I still don't think he gets as much credit as he deserves for just how steady and solid he is. I love Devon Taves talking about how Cale might have a few more Norrises to his name through this point if he wasn't anchored to him. Thought that was hilarious. And I loved Nathan McKinnon suggesting he felt Cale already had 10 in his eyes. Only 6 years in the season or in the league so far, but I agree with Nate that it just feels like this is a player that should have 10 to his name because of how
he's a finalist every year.
5 of 6 of his NHL seasons and the 30 goal record that he broke this year. You know, it was a 2 decades old record that hadn't even been touched, and even past that, it's just not an achievement that many defensemen have met in their lifetime. And so he's so impressive. He's been on a Hall of Fame track this whole time. This just continues to solidify his route to the Hall of Fame records. And I think that in his own end, just his play on the breakout and being able to execute Colorado's transition style of hockey runs so much through him, and I think starts with him too. Like, I think Colorado moving in this direction and how they execute on the attack is because they get a player like Cale Makar. They can build around how they play hockey because of a player like him. And that's why he ends up a Norris finalist year after year.
It's I know there's a lot of people, and there's definitely, the NHL definitely went through a time where the Norris Trophy started to become a highest scoring defenseman trophy. I think they've done a good job of getting away from that. And to your point, I think there's a lot of people that want to point at that and say that's why Cale Makar wins so often, or is a finalist so often, I should say. But I couldn't possibly agree with you more, Megan. Like, he is such a good defender. Similar to Sam Girard in the sense of like the way he gaps, the way he uses his stick, the way he gets in lanes. His skating ability allows him to close on guys quicker than they think. His hands allow him to be, a little bit more maneuverable around the boards in his own end. And then everything that you talked about of getting the puck up and out of their zone, away from danger. He is one of the most efficient in the league at that.
6th in the league in takeaways. I don't think he gets credit for how evasive he can be with his skating and his puck skill, his stick positioning to be able to strip players of pucks in his own end too. I think it happens obviously in the offensive zone as well, but in his own end, everything that you just described makes him such a strong defensive player. And I think there's still so much room to grow. I feel in this last year with Cale Makar, the offensive side of the game, obviously 30 goals. There's a step forward there, right? But I felt more that he took a step forward defensively in his own end, personally. Because I think the last year for him, with some injury at the start, it was a bit of a struggle, even though he came away with a new points high. This year, I felt like he was motivated to get even better in his own end. I think he recognizes that he wants to be a multidimensional player. And he puts a lot of work into that. That also deserves a lot of credit. Yeah,
in the same way that, we've seen that evolution with Nathan McKinnon. We've heard Jared Bednar talk about that. He got to a point in his career where he realized, hey, I need to be more of a 200-foot player. I think we're seeing something similar with Cale Makar. And Corey Masisak cracks me up because he'll be in the press box and there'll be a rush going against the Avs, so towards the Avs net. Devon Toews, Cale Makar out there. And sometimes you'll just hear Corey start to chuckle to himself. And it's because Corey's been around the league for a long time. He's watched a lot of teams, and he goes, I've never seen a team that takes what looks like a high danger chance against them, and within 4 seconds, not only negates the chance that was going against them, but somehow turns it back up ice, and it's a crazy chance going the other way. The pairing of Devon Toews and Cale Makar specifically are so incredibly good at that. And again, I think there's a lot of people out there who see like, oh, there goes Cale Makar in another rush. And to your point, Megan, don't stop to appreciate what happened 2 seconds before that, where he cleanly stripped a guy off a puck, curled and escaped away and moved the play up ice all in one fluid motion. And that all starts with the defensive prowess of him and the way that him and Devon Toews play together, who we should mention, Devon Toews did receive 1/4 and 1/5 place vote for Norris.
I think that says a lot about Toews in his own right, too, to play alongside Cale Makar and still get a nod for his own abilities, because it is what they do together that makes them both individually successful. I think that Dallas really picked up on Cale Makar in the first round of the playoffs, and they made it difficult for him to break out the puck. And Toews came in as a foil to that, as relief to Cale Makar in those situations to make the rush attack a little bit more possible for them, where it was clear Dallas had Cale's number, and the way in which they play off of each other makes them both better.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun to watch. The Avs really found something great, something special in that pairing. It's why they wanted to keep Devon Toews here long term. It's why, we're going to talk about Marty Necas here in a minute, and there's a lot of conversation around the Mikko Rantanen trade and all these other players that the Avs have now at this price point. There's a Cale Makar extension that's coming that, I don't know, Megan, I think there's a world where he becomes the highest paid player in the league, especially as the cap continues to grow. But we'll see. I don't know, but the Avs are going to make it a priority, and it's why they've done a lot of what they've done to this point, is because they say we have the best defenseman in the world, depending on the week, the best player in the world, and we are going to prioritize keeping him here. And you see why. He becomes just the 14th player to win the Norris Trophy more than a single time.
I think when we revisit the Mikko Rantanen conversation and Colorado's inability to get that contract done, it'll always be a frustrating topic of conversation. But with a Cale Makar contract extension on the horizon, it's important to understand where Colorado needed to prioritize making sure they can offer him whatever he asks for, especially considering his last contract was pretty team friendly, all things considered, especially the trajectory that he was on. So I think the Cale Makar extension of it all is important to remember when we think about why Mikko Rantanen didn't work out in Colorado. They just paid Devon Toews, a couple seasons ago with a big extension. And I think it's important to recognize how lucky the Avs are to have a Toews, a McKinnon, a future Makar locked up as part of this core. And they've just resolved goaltending. As we start looking around the league, maybe at possible fits for a player like Marty Necas, if that is a player that's moving on, I think it's important to recognize just how lucky Colorado is to be constructed the way that they are, especially in today's cap era. Looking at a team like Edmonton in the Cup final, it's clear the other price to pay in this, you sacrifice some other areas of the lineup, but we can get into that later.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think the Cale Makar negotiation is going to more be, what do you want?
Here's a blank check.
Right. And the only maybe negotiation that you'd see from the Avs side is like, can we bring that down $150K so we can end up with this round number here to work with? No? Okay, that's fine. I imagine that's a lot of how that contract negotiation is going to go.
No, that's fine. Anything you want, sir.
Can you throw up that bottom comment there, the most recent one? No, an extra $400K didn't keep them from being able to sign Cale Makar, but it would have kept them from being able to sign Cale Makar and a second line center and a second line winger and a third line center and some depth pieces for your fourth line. So that's kind of the difference there. Let's get into it, Megan. Marty Necas. Nick Kipper. Well, if you get on the internet right now and you search Marty Necas and you click on news headlines on Google, there's a lot of stuff that says Nick Kyprios of Sportsnet reports that Marty Necas was not happy in Colorado and wants to be traded. That is kind of what all of this has spooled up into. When in reality, Nick Kyprios is kind of like a last little throwaway line at the end of a trade bait list. Said, I don't know, Marty Necas might be a guy. I heard some potential chatter that he wasn't overly thrilled in Colorado. That was it. You and I, right after the playoffs ended, wondered, I don't know, if the Avs really weren't happy with how things went with Marty Necas in the playoffs, and if you don't think you can maybe get him signed at a number that makes you comfortable, could the Avs potentially explore moving a player like this? I don't know, blah, 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 blah. It's all hypothetical stuff. These are all scenarios that we kind of started painting of, well, hey, if the Avs go a super aggressive route, could they maybe look to flip Marty Necas if you didn't get exactly what you wanted from him? Again, I take the Nick Kyprios sentence as, keep an eye on this. Maybe it wasn't a perfect fit, but we'll see. And suddenly it's become this kind of like the Avs are moving on from Marty Necas. And while I'm definitely not going to say it's not possible, I do think this has been blown a little bit out of proportion. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's not the only name that's been thrown out by Kyprios. Now Charlie Coyle is among them. And outside of just Kyprios, Gerard's name has been thrown into the mix. It's the offseason. And everybody's looking at that Avs exit with question marks and where does the team go from here? Do they run it back? Do they need to make some changes? It's very fair and understandable speculation then to look at, all right, well, what assets could garner some kind of meaningful return that would change the complexion of this team going into next year? And it feels like I kind of want to come to the defense of the national reporters on this one. It's just off-season discussion.
Yeah.
It's not rooted in as much realness as it's being purported. Even DiCaprio's defense, like he wasn't suggesting that it was.
Right.
And when I look at the fan response to Necas, for example, after these playoffs, there's a lot of dissatisfaction from the fan base that you can feel. It's palatable online. Like, I imagine that feeling of dissatisfaction from the fan base, it's easy to kind of apply that to the player too. Like maybe they don't appreciate not being appreciated, being scapegoated. I could see if that was happening, why a player might feel, oh, maybe I don't want to play here. I don't think it's rooted in anything. Like when I mentioned this on the Brock Nelson emergency pod, but when I think back to Necas, his body language, his presence around the team, nothing suggested he was unhappy here. I remember a moment in game 2, OT, he came out, he had a skate blade issue. There's terrible ice. And you could see that he was so upset. He wasn't upset about playing in Colorado. He was upset about not playing to the level that he expected to be playing at this point. He wanted to make more of an impact in these playoffs. Bad ice, a funky, skate blade issue. And obviously that OT doesn't go the way that they would like. And
is this when we were all downstairs?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I just remember it so clearly because then in the locker room, though, like following like a morning skate next time, he is very pleasant and just doesn't appear like a guy who's unhappy to be here. And so I said it on the emergency pod, and I'll say it again here. Everything about what went wrong for Marty Necas in the playoffs communicates to me a player who was eager to please and was just getting this messaging and trying to translate it into what he thought the team wanted and needed of him, and just struggling to do so a little bit. But, I talked about the physicality in his game and the intention behind it you could see, and it just strayed a little bit though from the things that gave him success as well. And so I think there was a reluctancy to lean into the things that bring him success out of fear of making mistakes. And Dallas kind of did that to a lot of players. They almost paralyzed a lot of players because of how stifling they were in that first round. And I think Colorado gave them more hell than we give credit for. And I think it's why Dallas found themselves out of the Western Conference final in the end. But all that to say, I don't think Marty Necas was unhappy here.
Yes. Yeah. And that was what you and I talked about when the report, because there was my memory serves me right. There was also a kind of a follow-up comment a day or two after the Kiprio stuff, that said that it was maybe a little bit of a culture shock coming to Colorado. And you and I don't remember if it was on this pod or if it was just us talking, saying like, you could sell me on. We've heard from multiple players playing with Nathan MacKinnon is just different. Having that standard, that you're held to by a player, Jared, but he comes from playing under Rod Brindamore. There's no way that Jared Bednar is more intense than Rod Brindamore. So again, you could sell me on it was a little bit of a culture shock for Necas. That is the absolute furthest that you could sell me on him being unhappy based on our observations. Seemed like he got along with guys pretty immediately. Nathan MacKinnon's got that little kind of like inner circle that works on little, just small drills with Nate during optional skates. Marty Necas was immediately part of that group. And again, we never know what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe this isn't a great spot for him and his girlfriend, or I don't know. There's things that can go on, but I'm with you. I don't think if Marty Necas is unhappy in Colorado, I don't think that has to do with the team, him not getting along with folks, things like that. Now, again, I will say he's a year out from unrestricted free agency. If you're having initial talks with him and he's going to want, $11 million or something like that, I'm definitely not ruling out that the Avs could look to flip Marty Necas. And I'm grabbing a name fully out of a bag here that we talked about yesterday. But like, for me, this is what it would have to take. Like a guy like Mason McTavish, like a younger player who has a lot of upside, who's going to be a little cost controlled. Like, that's where I think the Avs would get involved in something like this. Otherwise, you find a way to make it work with Marty, probably comes in around 9.5, and you go. And you keep him here and he becomes part of the core. He's a little bit younger. He can ride shotgun next to Nathan MacKinnon and you get it done. But while I don't think it's out of the question, the Avs move him, I do think that, like you said, I think a lot of this is off-season chatter. And right now, not really much more than that.
You know, another thing I think about just to bolster his fit in Colorado is the respect shown from MacKinnon. Obviously bringing him into the fold with the kind of after practice one-on-one work that he does with players, but even the changes to the power play, they required Nathan MacKinnon to also reevaluate his usage on the power play to an extent. And you have to be without an ego to understand that Marty Necas has strengths of his own in his ability to move the puck, move himself, and move through traffic that led to the rotation that we would see that took a little bit of adjustment, but it started to become a bit more seamless after more reps together, and it was really effective. What they were able to do together differently on the power play, and it required both reevaluating their role. You know, like what Necas was for Carolina on their power play also required then taking a step back and giving MacKinnon the respect of what he means to Colorado's power play, the existing role that he's coming into. And I think they both showed each other a lot of mutual respect in working together to make that as effective as possible. But going back to, all right.
Well, so hold on, let me just shut real fast on the power play. That everything you said was part of what made the power play so disappointing in the playoffs was like, what happened to all of this? Like we saw it, like we all saw what the change.
I know I wasn't ready to move on from this because I think the power play is a huge topic of discussion. I didn't know if we need to move into McTavish territory yet.
No. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know if you were moving on. I just wanted to make sure I got that in on the power play.
The power play was wholly disappointing because it should have been better, and it should have been more of a foil to Dallas's PK than we saw, because I watched Edmonton in the conference final and what they were able to best power play. So hold on, time out. But when I look at the tools on Edmonton's power play and the way that they adopted against Dallas's PK, I was like, this was so possible for Colorado. Colorado had the tools to do this. And it all came down to something we've already talked about, which was not enough movement. It became stagnant and they weren't hard enough along the wall, getting picked off too easily there. And why that's frustrating is Marty Necas is the key to the solution in that, and his ability to protect the puck through traffic and get a pass off through the slot, driving inner ice. I think that he's so much better there because of his speed and his puck skill that it makes that an effective power play. They just didn't. It's like they were in their heads too much, stopped believing in themselves. I don't know. I'm not going to psychoanalyze that part of it. They stopped moving. I don't know why they did. They stopped moving. And Marty Necas is a great puck mover and he is a great skater. There's so much more potential that was not fully realized on the Avs power play. And look, it's already in need of a makeover. They're going to need to hire a new power play coach for next year. But I think Marty Necas can still be a huge part of that solution.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, that's why, if we wake up tomorrow and the Avs have signed him to an 8-year extension, I don't know if he's eligible to do that quite yet, July 1st. But, if we wake up on July 1st, see the Avs did that, I won't be surprised at all, because we saw the upside. In the same way that if the Avs decide to move on from Marty Necas, it won't completely shock me because of some of the struggles we saw in the playoffs. And, depending on how those initial contract negotiations go. But I'm with you. I look, maybe there's a little smoke here that this could be something that if other teams call, Chris McFarland isn't going to immediately hang up the phone. I'm sure they're willing to listen on some offers. But I don't take any of this as the Avs being out there shopping Marty Necas.
No, but I think it's totally fair. And this is where I come back to the defense of the national reporters who are throwing names out there, including Necas. With the Logan O'Connor injury, they have some more things to evaluate with their forward group going into next year than, before the news of that I had anticipated. And they don't have a lot of money to do it in having just signed Brock Nelson to an extension that I think they needed to get that piece of business done, no matter what. I have no regrets about that. But with that being said, they might need to consider then moving out a roster player of varying caliber to help replenish some parts of this lineup. And so that's where you can sell me on the possibility of Necas being a name that they would hear calls about. And now we can go back to Mason McTavish. I'm sorry.
No.
I backtracked us a little bit.
Great. But I was just mostly throwing him out because of what you're saying. Like the Avs are going to have to move a roster player somewhere, and that's a little bit of what we're going to get into. If it's not Necas, where else might it be? I think Miles Wood is the easy one that a lot of folks point to of, hey, that's an easy $2.5 million that you could just go on a cap dump somewhere. Maybe you're gonna have to attach a 5th round pick to it or something like that, but okay, you can give yourself some more wiggle room there. Okay, is there something on the back end you can do? Necas would be one where it's like, we're going to clear out a nice amount. And that's why I'm saying, like, to me, for it to make sense, it would have to be a guy like Mason McTavish, who's a little bit younger, climbing, still a little unproven, RFA status. He's going to be cost controlled. And I know you don't like this one, but a guy like Zegras, where it's like, yeah, that next contract isn't going to be a lot and there's upside. I guess that's where I'm going with it, more than the specifics of what are some players you can get that are cost controlled and have the upside. Let's get that up here. Oh, do not have the lights. Oh, there they are. We got a super chat. $4.99 from Hurricane Teabag. Any interest in Trevor Zegras? It seems like Kreider and Trouba would shank him if they're there long enough. P.S. Meghan can handle herself.
I think this is related to earlier, but I want to assume it's because you're worried, like, will Meghan shank Trevor Zegras? And I think she can handle herself in showing restraint is what I assume that means. Because that's funnier to me.
Yeah. I do think the Avs would have interest in Trevor Zegras. I think it's impossible to watch him and not see the on-ice upside. The skill, the ability to put the puck in the net, a little bit flashier player. But as you are right to worry about with that, Megan, we were just talking about the potential culture shock for a guy like Marty Necas coming to Colorado. I imagine not only coming from an organization where you've known nothing but losing, but also some of the reports that we've heard around Zegras and the work ethic potential issues and maybe not quite seeing eye to eye with coaches and maybe sometimes kind of wanting to do his own thing. You're definitely taking a gamble on a player like that. Like, that is a high wire act, boom or bust. You're either hitting a home run or you're striking out swinging.
It's tough. I just don't. There's a lot of risk involved with the Avs currently, including they need Brock Nelson to pan out, and that risk seems a lot lower because you want to talk about culture shock. Huge culture shock coming for Trevor Zegras in Colorado, and I get frustrated with this player because I think that initially in Greg Cronin's time with the Ducks,
it could be so good.
There was a connection and there was an emphasis on the importance of play away from the puck and defense that Cronin was trying to drill into Zegras. And it seemed like it was resonating with him until it didn't. And he tuned that out and kind of kept that blocked from his mind when it stopped connecting. And look, Greg Cronin's not a total innocent in this. I don't think he's utilized Mason McTavish well enough to this point. And so I am sad. I'm still a very big Greg Cronin fan, but I see how things didn't work out. And that gives me pause, though, around a player like Zegras. Because on one hand, very different culture team-wide coming to Colorado. So the accountability isn't just coach to player. It's going to be coming from everyone, including someone like Nathan McKinnon. So that's
who Zegras would probably be playing pretty closely with, at least to start.
Certainly. And so I don't doubt that Zegras himself could benefit a lot from that. I'm just still nervous. Like, will he be giving as much as he will be receiving from this opportunity? Or will that day come yet again where he just stops caring about the defensive side of the game? Because it's an important one for Colorado. And honestly, I think when they loaded up down the middle the way they did after the deadline, they became a much stronger defensive team than I think they get credit for. I feel like I've said that phrase a lot on this podcast, but it will become so important for the success of their identity in a Bednar system, especially, that you can't afford to have players who stop caring about that. And, okay, then I guess you just move him out if it doesn't work. And I'm so uninterested in Trevor Zegras. I won't hurt anyone, just to be very clear, but I'd rather talk about Mason McTavish.
Yeah. And last thing on Zegras, then let's get back to McTavish. But I think you're so right about like, the culture shock and the accountability and all that stuff. And that's why I do think that it would either be Trevor Zegras would find himself suddenly in a place where winning matters and accountability. And I think he would either thrive in that, and it would be this, oh my gosh, I can't believe the Avs were able to steal this young player from Anaheim who's, going to go on to have 100 points playing next to Nathan McKinnon and 8 Michigans a year and all this stuff. Or it's like, whoa, I can't believe after all that, they ended up with Trevor Zegras, who flamed out on 30 points a year and toiled around on the third line before eventually, blah, blah, blah. So I'm with you. There's a lot of risk there. A guy like Mason McTavish, which when you and I first heard that his name was out there for the Ducks, we were like, why would you do that? But it does seem like they maybe haven't utilized him, right? As a 22-year-old player, that if the Avs could find a way to pry him out of Anaheim's hands in exchange for a guy like Marty Necas, that's something that gets you really excited.
Yeah, it definitely does. I think Mason McTavish through this point is a product of a really difficult environment. That's true of Zegras too, but different for McTavish. I think he has been underutilized up until late into this last season, where he was getting more top 6 opportunity, but he was kind of resigned to a depth role. And I think that he has a good skill set that deserved more of a look, especially given Anaheim's position as a team. Because I do think there are areas of his game to round out that he just hadn't really been trusted or demanded of him through this point. But I think back to what I've seen of him going back World Juniors. And this is a player that I think can be more of that power forward mold that would fit in so well, whether it's middle 6 to start with top 6 expectation, ambition for Mason McTavish in the future in Colorado. Because again, that's a role adjustment. Playing top 6 in Anaheim doesn't mean you come to Colorado and play in the top 6.
Right.
And I think that's okay. I think if you give him trust and responsibility, he can be more of an impact player than we've seen in Anaheim. I think that there's I talk about, players who are warriors on the ice. I think he has that quality about him that hasn't been fully realized in the NHL just yet, but I've seen flashes of it. And I think that it would fit in so well under Jared Bednar's system to have a player like that. Again, you have something way more established in a player like Marty Necas, for example, that this is such a hypothetical that I just like McTavish as a player. I'm not necessarily interested in him in Colorado at the expense of Necas, just to be clear, but I'm interested in him in Colorado.
Yeah, I did think Chloe and I were talking this morning. I said, I don't know if you could get in exchange for Necas, like Mason McTavish and a third, and then you could put that third to work. I actually just saw a really interesting comment in the chat. Yeah, right there from Bama Metcalf, I think. Bama Calf. And yeah, Bama Metcalf. I love the idea of McTavish at 3C to move to 2C when Brock at the end of the Brock Nelson contract. Use Coyle to get a younger D, maybe a Keandre Miller type. That would be some type of maneuvering that I would definitely be interested in.
That is interesting. Yeah, I'd be interested in that too, because I know Keandre Miller is a player kind of in this list that we're going to eventually talk about. And I have a lot of interest in, he fits kind of a different mold than what's represented in Colorado's D-core currently, a young, capable defender with a mind and emphasis on defense. And New York had one of the worst defensive metrics as a team this last year. But I think that he assumed more responsibility and started to handle himself there a lot better against top matchups, that I'm extremely interested in a player like that and and kind of changing the makeup of the back end then, especially I don't remember if that proposal it didn't even mention, but they're gonna, there's a decor eventually that exists without Josh Manson for Colorado. At least in my opinion.
Whether it be through trade or that contract just expiring at the end of the year.
Exactly.
Saying,
it's not me trying to yeet him out of there for no reason, but they're going to need then some more of that defensive-minded defenseman reflected in the decor. I still love the idea of some form of the physicality also being upped, whether they extend a player like Lindgren or not. But either way, there's still a little bit of work to be done on the back end that I'm absolutely interested in. If you're moving on from a player like Necas, for example, the return potentially being to address a need on the back end.
Yeah. We are going to get more into trade and free agent hypotheticals here over the next couple days and weeks. But Megan, the point being is that if you wanted to go the Marty Necas route, you have some options that you could explore. If none of them feel right, if you don't feel like you can get a younger player that, can grow into that potential and stuff like that, then you don't do anything. You keep Marty Necas and you go. But as we said, the Avs are going to have to make a move here to make some room.
Yeah, we're here for a good time, not a long time.
Right.
Like we can talk about it as a hypothetical without being married to it actually happening.
Right. And so Marty Necas is an option. I think guys like Miles Wood, Ross Colton, maybe. I think those are all options if you're purely just looking at the dollars and cents. There's two other players that I want to talk about today before we jump out of here. And one of them is Sam Girard. This is a player that his name has been out there for years and years, whether it be that the Avs were actually interested in moving him, that just kind of being the rumor milling, that's what fans wanting, whatever. The fact of the matter is you've got Cale Makar, and now you've got the emergence of Sam Malinsky. As good of a defenseman as Sam Girard is, and despite what some fans think, at a great price tag for what you get out of him, there is a chance that we are coming to that day where Sam Girard's time in Colorado may be coming to a close, as they could maybe look to move him in the name of freeing up some cap space, bolstering the forward core to make themselves a little bit more flexible on guys they could move there. Like Necas, I think this is far from a foregone conclusion that it's going to happen. But I do think this is the first summer, Megan, where I feel like, we probably need to have this conversation because there is a chance that Sam Girard has become a bit redundant. So
of all the rumors that have been thrown out there, this is the one I believe the most in, that there is some more backing to it. And it's not coming from a personal place of not liking Girard or his fit on Colorado, but in what I was just saying about Keandre Miller and how he could represent something that's not really captured in the decor currently. Girard, to your point, is a bit redundant. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to not fully appreciate what he does bring to the Avs. I think he's really helped their penalty kill and to alleviate some minutes from players like Makar and Taves that has been so useful for them. But the smaller, undersized, puck-moving defenseman is represented in that decor. Mm-hmm. Kind of Cale Makar. Like, I know people are on the fence if you consider him undersized or not, but he certainly has the mobility puck-moving aspect fully captured, right? And then, of course, the emergence of Sam Malinsky is a part of that too.
Can I give Cale a little bit of credit on because I actually heard Frank Saravelli and Tyler Yarmachuk talking about it this morning about Sam Girard and this and like the undersized stuff, and they brought up Cale Makar, and Frank said, and Cale's a little bit undersized and he doesn't play very big. That I actually disagree with. I think Cale Makar plays a lot bigger than he gets credit for, and there's a handful of players around the league that could probably attest to that. What's up, Jordan Stahl? That. What was that train that just hit me? Oh, that's that undersized guy we always talk about. That hurt, and I just wanted to throw that out there. That I actually think Cale does play a bit over his weight class.
Well, and that's why I say, I think people are on the fence on where to classify him. Because I don't personally consider him undersized, but I know some people do. Mm-hmm. He's 5'11", but he's an actual 5'11". There are guys who say they're 5'10", and I mean in hockey specifically. I'm not unnecessarily bullying anyone. And I walk by and I know that is 5'10" on skates, and that's not in actuality. And so Cale Makar is a true 5'11". Cale Makar is a true 5'11", and he's kind of built like a fridge.
He is.
Not, maybe not not the fridge in the garage that your parents have had forever where they keep the extra sodas, but a fridge nonetheless. And you think
2025 fridge,
a 2025 fridge, a smart fridge, if you will. He could play you music. He'll throw a reverse hit at the blue line and it'll bowl you over. And you don't want to underestimate that. And I don't think opponents necessarily do, but it will catch you off guard because he's not so easily knocked off his skates. Mm-hmm. And if you go to engage him in contact, you're probably the one coming down. Yeah. And so I love this shout out to Cale Makar, a lot stronger than he gets credit for.
Yeah.
I almost even lost my train of thought.
You said Sam Malinsky, the emergence of him.
There we go.
Yeah.
I think this is where I'm moving towards. The Avs have some needs to address in this offseason, even within their own back end. They have some decisions that they need to make. And he's just kind of, there are aspects of his game that you can find in some of these other players. And there are aspects of the back end generally that still need to be addressed. And it's as simple as that in my mind, why this is a player. I could see them feasibly moving out kind of out of necessity. Yeah. And it stinks because I also don't want to take for granted how good of a deal this is. 2 more years at $5 million.
Yep.
When I looked last summer just at some of the contracts that were being given out to defensemen, that I'd have less interest being on the Avs, just to be honest with you. Huge money, big money, gave me a greater appreciation then for what Cale Makar is and how he helps to round out the roster picture. Cheaper.
Sam Girard, you mean?
Girard.
Okay, you said Cale Makar.
Sorry.
No, you're good. We've talked a lot about Cale.
Yeah, and then the fridge thing really threw me off. Sorry.
Well, so let me also say this, because I'm with you. Like, this isn't me trying to like advocate or drag Sam Girard. Megan, I have said it more times than I can keep count of. To me, depending on where the Avs move him, Sam Girard's there's a decent chance he'll end up being a top pair guy next year, depending on where he lands. To me, I think he's a no doubt second pairing defenseman. I think even on the Avs, he's been a number 3 at times, like behind Makar, Taves. I think there's times over the last 2 seasons in particular where, you can say, yep, Sam Girard's at number 3. And to your point, at $5 million, that's how highly I think of Sam Girard. I think he's an excellent defenseman. Yeah. The 5'11" conversation. He's listed at 5'10". Look, as a shorter guy myself, I am definitely not out here to out anybody or drag anybody for not being what their listed height. But that's definitely he got that measurement done when he was wearing his skates. He's a smaller guy, but talk about being built like a fridge. Sam Girard is just one big muscle. Like, he's jacked. So he's stronger than he gets credit for. Yes, is he going to get pushed out in front of the net sometimes against, bigger players? Yeah, that's going to happen. But I think he's a really good defenseman. I think he's an all-world skater that gets glossed over because he's on a team with Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar. I think this is a really, really good defenseman that if you're dangling out there, you're going to get a good return on.
You have to, not only because of the value of his current contract and getting 2 more years out of that for any team, but to your point where he can play in a lineup. He's a second pair on a team that has Taves and Makar. So it's very easy to imagine him having a greater role on a different team. Even looking at just like Lindgren's role in New York, it really put me back into reality how fortunate the Avs are to have Taves and Makar as a top pairing option. But with Girard, I go back to what I see on the kill and what he does defensively, that I don't consider myself one of those people who is obsessed with size. And so where I see Girard be effective on the kill is because of his size. He is agile and he's able to gap up on guys and maybe take away a lane just because he's there. And so he's not necessarily going to physically move guys from the net front, but he has the puck skill to clear pucks from the crease and the agility to close up on guys quickly that I think makes him effective on the kill. Doesn't get enough credit for that. And I would have loved to see him have more offense this year. Just the full season of runway after the stint with the player assistance program last year, I thought he came back in great shape, great form. So I wanted him to build on that even more going into this year. And I think that's the only thing that left me wanting a little bit because of the puck skill that is there. But he also didn't have consistency with a partner. Manson dealt with injury at times. And so we saw the Sams come together at some point. And so that is still a young player alongside him in Malinsky getting his bearings. That's going to affect the overall year for Girard as well. So this is all me saying, I don't want to just ship Girard out with stopping for a second to appreciate what the Avs have in him and why that should command a very good return.
Because really, I really do make it without running through what every team has on their back end right now. I think that you're probably talking about half the league, 15 to 16 teams that would drop Sam Girard in on their top pairing if he got to town tomorrow. Maybe that's a little bit of a high number, but I don't know. I think there's a lot of teams that would happily take Sam Girard to be an impact guy for the top of their lineup. If it's not Sam Girard, it could be Josh Manson, and maybe you do just put the Sams together and roll with it. But if it's not a defenseman, this is the last player we'll talk about for today. And this one, Megan, I don't think is very likely. This is just me because I think the Avs kind of made a point of going out and getting this player specifically to bolster their depth, and more specifically to bolster their depth down the middle. And it was part of what they liked so much about the makeup of their team post deadline this past season that I just, in addition to what they gave up to get him, I don't see them moving on from him. But Charlie Coyle's name has been floated out there as well, given that the first round didn't go great for him. But again, I do think this is a player that being able to roll Charlie Coyle out at 3C, especially if you're going to find a way to make a little bit more, room cap wise elsewhere. I think being able to run McKinnon, Nelson, Coyle down the middle is very much by design for this group.
Absolutely. I think it was significant that he has another year in his contract that the Avs would like to exercise that additional year with him with this group. Obviously, that also would have value in a trade too, but they pay a second round pick, Zellers, obviously Casey Middlestat, to make this trade happen. That is paying a little bit of a premium. Zellers, a top scorer in the USHL this past year, second round pick. They're not exactly flush with draft capital at the moment, and they needed to move on from Casey Middlestat, which I'll put an asterisk by for a second. You look at the early returns of Coyle in the regular season, he goes on this tear, 11 points in 6 games at the end of the year. And you were seeing in that short window the possibility. He made the third line better because what I'll say too is some of Miles Wood's best hockey this last year came playing alongside Charlie Coyle. And I really even liked the version of Charlie Coyle that I saw playing alongside Miles Wood. I think, Ross Colton still just struggled at the end of this year going into it all. But what I really liked was what Coyle teased at the end of the regular season. Things didn't go to plan in the playoffs. Another player like Necas, where the showing just, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater just because the first round of the playoffs didn't go so great. A lot of people were paralyzed and stunted by the Dallas Stars. And I really loved how much better the Avs became defensively. And I loved Coyle on the kill until the playoffs. So another asterisk by that, didn't love what he did on the kill in the playoffs. Love what I saw though in the regular season. To your point, I think it's all by design. I don't think he's immovable though, but it just really has to make a lot of sense, especially because their bottom 6 picture just became a lot murkier with Logan O'Connor not available to start the year. And then of course, just monitoring his status throughout the year. And obviously Kiviranta, that third line, it just needs a real solution. So you don't want to make more question marks unless you start having answers. And so that's where I'm at. The other thing I think people point to is, was Charlie Coyle unhappy, with his fit in Colorado because of that instance coming off the power play where McKinnon snapped at him a little? And I don't think that's a big deal at all. And I'm not worried about that.
No, and Coyle gave it to him right back. And again, he's not the first player we've seen Nathan McKinnon snap at. And I think that I think a guy like Charlie Coyle is a veteran enough and has the appreciation enough that, I talked to an Avs player, I won't say who, was off the record, earlier this year. And it was one of the new guys for this season. And I asked about playing with Nate and that intensity and, how different it is from coming from other players. And he likened Nate, saying, oh, well, this player that I played with on my last team, elite player, really good. Nate's on a different level and he holds you to that standard. And I was about to ask him, do you like that? And I got, do you love, and he cut me off. He goes, I fucking love it. I love it. And I think that's the attitude of a lot of guys in there.
I do too.
And so, no, I think that was a heat of the moment. Competitors on the ice trying to win. I'm with you. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
Megan, we're going to wind it down here. Heading game 4, Stanley Cup Finals tonight. A blowout win for the Florida Panthers in game 3. I know you guys talked a lot about it on Pucks and Prosecco yesterday, and oh my gosh, his name completely
Tom
fell out.
Gazzola.
Thank you. Tom Gazzola was on with you guys, covers the Oilers. So that was a great episode. Go listen to that one from yesterday for a really nice in-depth breakdown on what's been going on so far in the Stanley Cup final in Game 3 specifically. The Oilers came unglued. Game 4 in Sunrise tonight. The Florida Panthers have a chance to jump out to a 3-1 lead. You know the Oilers are going to push back, but I've seen a lot of chatter these last couple days about like, ooh, the Oilers might be in trouble. They may have allowed the Florida Panthers to find their game, and it's going to be hard for them to get back in after your conversation yesterday. What are you thinking heading into tonight?
Well, so it's tough. I still have Florida with the edge in
Is
this
Game 4 tomorrow?
final. It is tomorrow.
It's tomorrow?
It's Thursday.
I thought we had already been through 2 days. What the hell is this?
It's okay. You have to wait one more day for hockey. That I honestly believed you that today was Thursday and it was happening tonight for a second there. So, but it's okay. The hockey happens tomorrow. There's still plenty to talk about.
All right. Well, how do you feel about the game tomorrow?
How I feel about the game tomorrow. Edmonton still has a chance in this series. It's going to be difficult though, because even when I look back on Game 1 and 2, where the margin was so close between both teams, I think that's their path to winning. They're going to have to be some pretty close games, and it's important for Edmonton not to stray from their game. Florida baited them into doing that, into trying to play Florida's game, and only Florida can play Florida's game. Okay, Edmonton needs to do what they do best and not get baited into the extracurriculars the way in which they did, and allow a little bit more of this to roll off their shoulders. Because I understand where some of that emotional pent-up frustration that boiled over into that game came from. It's not unfounded, but that's exactly what Florida does best. And I think that it took away what an offensive threat the Edmonton Oilers can be because they were trying to play Florida's game. And so it sounds simple, but they just got to show up as themselves. And obviously, the star players need to show up as themselves. Discipline will be incredibly important. And goaltending, it's a question mark. I'm not going to say it goes one way or the other. It just needs to be a reset. It's pretty simple there, too. They obviously didn't get goal support, so that's not the sole reason Game 3 was a punch in the mouth the way that it was. But goaltending will be the other question to be answered for Edmonton moving forward.
Who do you think starts?
I think they should go back to Skinner.
So this has long been my issue with teams that try to go tandem. It works in the regular season, and you could maybe even argue that it works better than having, if you've got a 1A, 1B, you could argue that it works better in the regular season, maybe, than having a designated number one. Guys stay more fresh. Usually it's real collaborative, and they're, really supportive of each other, and not that they become any less supportive of each other in the playoffs, not that they become any less collaborative, but we've all seen it. The minute one goalie has even a little bit of a struggle, puck goes in the net, what's the first camera jump? To the backup goalie. And then it becomes this, okay, well, if you pull one goalie out, where do you draw the line to put that guy back in? How much does that affect the confidence of the goalie that you pulled? How much is the goalie that you just put in looking over his shoulder, saying, oh man, if I make a mistake, am I coming out? And it's a little bit of what I think the Oilers have run into here, where you pulled Stuart Skinner out 2 playoffs in a row in favor of Calvin Pickard. Calvin Pickard hasn't lost yet in this postseason, but got hurt. Now the first game he's back available, he has to go in relief. So now I just think that you're kind of in this room of like, how do you handle this? Because you don't have, and it's part of the reason why we've talked about before. I always felt that Jared Bednar put so much vocal confidence in Alexander Georgiev, even after that terrible Game 1 in Winnipeg last year, because it's like, you have to do that. You can't be 50-50 on. We even talked about it with DeBoer. Okay, how'd you come back and won that game? How do you handle the next one? If you go back to Jake Onger, what does that say to Casey DeSmith? Hey, thanks for keeping our season alive, but you're back to the bench. Or if you go to Casey DeSmith, what does that say to Jake Ottinger? Hey, thanks for getting us here, but this guy won 1 game, so now we trust him more. a tandem situation gets things messy. All of that's to say, I agree with you. I think it should be Skinner.
And honestly, I learned a lot about Skinner from Tom yesterday, that I don't think he's like other goalies in taking it really personally. And so I think that he can receive being pulled and bounce back, make that something productive, but not something that is wearing on him, affecting his game moving forward. And I also, Tom pointed out that he typically gets better later in the series too. So I want to give him game 4 and see what he's got, and know that there's an intriguing and capable goalie backing him up in Pickard. And it's tough because goalies coming in cold, you're not getting the best of Pickard in that situation. That's just the reality. So it's not as easy as, well, if that doesn't work, just do this, and it's going to be as good as if Pickard started. I won't go as far to say that, but run it back with Skinner.
And if he lays another egg tomorrow, sure. Yeah. Suddenly your season's on the line, go to Calvin Pickard.
Yeah.
But, is Stuart Skinner not just Mike Smith 2.0 to you? Like the ups and downs, the unbelievable play combined with the like absolute, what are you even doing out there? And he's just kind of reckless.
I've been thinking about not the Mike Smith comparison specifically, just like, where am I at with Stu Skinner? Because I don't consider myself the most dialed into goalies. Like, I care about them a lot, but I'm not an expert on the position. And I don't know how to evaluate what Stu Skinner is and how I feel about him. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just very confusing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a lot of thoughts on that. We'll save it for another day.
We'll see how tomorrow goes, and that will purely shift. I've always believed in Stu Skinner. I never doubted him for a second.
I knew it. I think we got a couple more super chats here. $4.99. Ethan Olvera. Is there any reason why J-Mac isn't able to play up? Sorry, we got a new camera that's in my way. Next year at a good price. Historic AHL season seems to be a good reason. Is it not? I'll let you run with this one a little bit. This is not for me. This is not me saying that I don't think Jacob McDonald can play at the NHL level. We've seen it before with multiple organizations. He, in my opinion, is a great example of a quadruple A player.
Yeah, I love his versatility. It just wasn't needed the way it was in the past. Because I do think this is a player that they trust a little bit less as a defenseman in a call-up. I think they like him as a forward, as a call-up, and it just wasn't necessary this year. And also, I think the Brad Hunt experience really shaped how they wanted to approach call-ups with veteran players this last year. And I think they wanted to grant McDonald stability, consistency in the American League. And that would have been a break glass in case of emergency. That would have been like some kind of serious injury that can't be addressed by a trade to Colorado's back end. And thankfully, they didn't find themselves in that place. And I think Jacob McDonald understands that too. So I still think he's in a short list of players, but they've got a guy like Sam Malinsky, who we didn't even know would stick in the NHL full-time, that's able to do that this last year. And then they graduate Keaton Middleton, who brings something very different that you could tell Jared Bednar really wanted represented. And it's so different from what J-Mac brings that I think they, in everything we've been talking about, like, they've got the small puck-moving defenseman. That is J-Mac, especially as a defenseman. They needed the Keaton Middleton as like, well, let's get something different into the fold here. So I don't think it's personal to J-Mac at all.
No.
And interestingly too, like Wyatt Ahmet getting the call up, that's a player that has not made the NHL debut just yet. It's at the end of the season. And he certainly has earned it. I think they just had more of an idea of what J-Mac was, and he still would have been in that short list, but they wanted to see what players like Keaton Middleton, Wyatt Ahmet eventually could bring later in the year. And
just because folks may not know, Jacob McDonald is 32. He's definitely kind of beyond that prospect tag. He's a pro player. And again, I said, I think he's a quadruple A type guy where he's clearly a step ahead of the American League, but just not quite at that NHL level. And there is a mix of players that are in that space.
Yeah.
Last one here, and this is an interesting. Love the lights. Love the lights. Did you see Jay Fresh's comments on smaller D in the playoffs? Kale is the only sub 6-footer to contribute seriously to a cup run. So this was something that was also being discussed on Daily Faceoff today, Megan. That it has been a little bit of a trend the last few years that you can have one undersized guy. You can't have much more than that. I don't know. I don't know if I fully buy into that, but the numbers are the numbers.
I'm about to sneeze.
So. Oh, okay. I couldn't tell if you were thinking really intently or...
I think it's gone. I think you're in the clear. I just didn't want to start speaking and then immediately sneeze. I don't know how to feel about this. Obviously, numbers are numbers. I'm not going to look the numbers in the face and say that they're wrong.
Here's the one that I will say. The numbers may be wrong in that, like, Devon Taves is listed at 6'1". I don't know if he's 6'1". And so, like, you could have some guys in there that fall in that 5'11" category. And again, I
what stinks too is Gerard absolutely would have
been
a part of 2022 if not for the injury, and it would kind of foil this whole thing.
But he didn't. He got hurt. Again, no one, I don't think, as well as Jack Johnson did play on that run coming in as the 7th D, like, I don't think anyone's arguing that Sam Girard would have been a more effective player than Jack Johnson.
Right.
And so, to your point, I don't think swapping Sam Girard for Jack Johnson changes much about that run. And it would just, poke a huge hole in this whole theory. But I don't know. The numbers are the numbers, but I do think that it is a way to just kind of blanket, like, oh yeah, see, you can't have small defensemen.
I agree, and that's why I don't want to accept this, because I think
also what
requires more context.
What makes 6 foot the arbitrary cutoff? So again, Devon Taves is 6'1", so he's that much above what they consider to be an undersized defenseman. Like,
right. Because I'm even just thinking about, like, Lindgren, Malinsky. I think they're right in the 5'11" territory. And it's like, we accept Cale Makar. Well, because he's Cale Makar, that is very different. But, like, is 5'11" really so different from 6 foot?
Right.
Especially because those players are built pretty big. I mean, I can't start saying everybody's built like a fridge. It kind of takes away from the meaning of it all. But they're all kind of fridge-like.
Yeah. They're stocky dudes for sure.
I really I hate they just need to get bigger, because I don't think they got beat up and bullied out of the playoffs this year.
And that's my thing with it is, again, the numbers are the numbers. And if that's, if there's only been one sub 6 foot guy that's played meaningful minutes, then hey, that's what it is. But I'm with you. I don't think them getting bigger immediately correlates better
success.
Yeah, harder to play against.
But if they continue to get smaller,
yes.
For example, if they shipped out Josh Manson and brought in another 5'11" player,
right,
I would feel a little nervous around
then it's
that.
Like, ooh, we got a lot of small guys.
I still think you need size represented, and perhaps more than it has been through this point. But I'm not going to start shipping out all the 5'11" guys just because they came in an inch short.
Right. That's a great way of putting it. I think it's a great way to wrap it up. We'll have more coming to you guys' way at the end of the week. But Stanley Cup Final continues tomorrow. We'll be watching. We'll have more to talk about. We got some fun stuff in the pipeline, Megan. We had a fun meeting yesterday that I think we're both looking forward to. And
yes,
hopefully some more fun stuff coming down. But she's Megan. I'm Jesse. We got Chloe and John back there today, making sure this all comes together. So that'll do it as I put my shoe back on. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good one. Get out and enjoy the sun a little bit before the rain rolls back in. Take it easy, everybody. Bye.
Bye.